Ey Yunan, bak tarihe bak. Tarihe dön. Çok daha fazla ileri gidersen bunun bedeli ağır olur, ağır.
Why are Greece and Turkey on the brink of a potential military conflict? What's driving these two nations, historically intertwined and geographically close, to invest billions into military buildups? You might be thinking this is simply another chapter in a long-standing rivalry. But what we're seeing right now is a new arms race fueled by shifting geopolitical realities and economic power plays.
Vakti, saati geldiğinde gereğini yaparız. Hani diyoruz ya, bir gece ansızın gelebiliriz.
You see, the tension between Greece and Turkey goes way back, with roots in events like the Cyprus crisis of 1974 and territorial disputes that have stretched over centuries. One key flashpoint was the Imia dispute in 1996, when both nations nearly went to war over two uninhabited islets in the Aegean Sea. But the past few years have seen a serious escalation. In fact, as you'll later find out, the current military investments on both sides clearly indicate that the situation is only getting worse. Now, as most of you might already know, the Eastern Mediterranean is rich in resources, especially natural gas. Whoever controls the area controls these resources. So there's a struggle for economic and strategic dominance. Greece and Turkey are positioning themselves for something much larger than we've seen before, which begs the question, why are they ramping up military preparations now? And what are the broader implications for the region? Let's dive into the recent events that have turned up the heat and explore how both countries are pushing the envelope in what's becoming one of the most fascinating geopolitical standoffs in Europe today. Let me explain how things escalated so quickly between Greece and Turkey. First off, it all boils down to resources in the Eastern Mediterranean. Both nations are claiming maritime territories rich in natural gas. Now here's the problem. Turkey doesn't recognize the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, which grants islands their own exclusive economic zones. Greece itself does observe the Law of the Sea, putting them at direct odds. But what's even more alarming is that Turkey has been sending exploration vessels escorted by warships into these contested waters, boldly defying Greece's claims. And in case you didn't know, Greece has been building alliances with Israel, Egypt, and Cyprus to strengthen its position. As if that's not enough, Turkey's expanding its influence too, even distancing itself from NATO. Even worse, President Erdogan shocked everyone by declaring we could come suddenly one night, hinting at a potential military strike. Which brings us to Cyprus, a divided island symbolizing their ongoing struggle. Turkey's military has been in northern Cyprus since 1974, and the island remains a hotspot. Greece has signed defense agreements with Cyprus, while Turkey uses the northern part as a strategic base. And if you think that's troubling, Erdogan's Blue Homeland strategy, formed in 2019, aims to extend Turkish control over vast areas of the Eastern Mediterranean, as well as the half Aegean Sea, challenging Greek claims even further. Meanwhile, there's the issue of airspace violations and island disputes. Over the past decade, Greece has reported thousands of Turkish airspace violations, over 4,000 in 2021 alone. But here's the crazy part. Many occur near Greek islands that Turkey calls gray zones, disputing their ownership even further. These strategically located islands have become flashpoints for future conflict. And to make matters worse, Erdogan recently boasted that Turkish missiles could strike Athens, further escalating tensions. In the face of these escalating threats, Greece hasn't just been sitting idly by. They've been forging powerful defense alliances, with one of the most pivotal moves being the Franco-Greek Defense Pact, signed September 27, 2021. This game-changing agreement is clear. If either Greece or France is attacked by a third party, the other will come to their aid. It's a clear message to Turkey and the world that Greece is far from alone in this standoff. But that's not all. Both nations are racing to modernize their forces, each preparing for what could be an inevitable showdown. But what we'll talk about next is what will likely change the balance of power in the region forever. Now let me explain what's truly fueling this new arms race. It's all about economics. You see, Greece and Turkey aren't just building up their militaries just as a display of pride. There's a lot more to it. The truth is, military spending is taking up huge portions of both countries' budgets, with massive consequences. For Greece, its defense budget is around 7 billion euros, a whopping 4% of its GDP, one of the highest ratios in Europe. But wait, there's more. Over the past 5 years, Greece has nearly doubled its defense spending. And that's simply because they're worried, and for good reason. Think of it this way. Greece is much smaller than Turkey, so they've had to invest heavily in advanced technology to maintain balance. Projections suggest Greece will keep increasing defense spending despite economic challenges. And in case you need more proof of this, you should know that they've cut social services like healthcare and education to fund their military buildup. But what about Turkey? Its defense budget for 2024 is set to increase by 150%, bringing it to roughly $46 billion, a significant leap from previous years and far higher than Greece's current defense spending. Yet Turkey's military ambitions extend beyond its budget. Despite struggles like 55% inflation in 2023, Turkey is prioritizing military investment. Now let me explain how. Unlike Greece, Turkey has a strong domestic defense industry, allowing it to save on imports by producing weapons like Bayraktar TB2 drones and Indigenous missiles. But what's even more interesting is that Turkey is exporting these weapons, boosting its economy and financing military projects. But that's not all. This spending is straining both economies. For Greece, funding military projects means sacrificing investments in infrastructure, healthcare, and education. They're already reliant on EU funds for infrastructure, but defense spending comes from the national budget. And in case you're not aware, the Greek public is feeling the squeeze with high taxes and reduced services. On top of this, Turkey faces different challenges. While its defense industry allows high military spending, economic instability from inflation and currency devaluation makes the situation fragile. But looking at the bigger picture, Turkey's military ambitions are deeply tied to its geopolitical goals, especially in the Eastern Mediterranean. This is a huge problem for Greece. And in the next section, we'll discuss how Greece is planning to retaliate in a potential war. Now let me make this clear. Greece isn't taking Turkey's buildup lightly. Recently, Greece has launched a massive military modernization to tip the balance, or at least prevent Turkey from gaining an advantage. And here's where it gets interesting. First, Greece acquired 24 Rafale fighter jets, state-of-the-art aircraft from France, for 2.5 billion euro. These jets are absolute game changers, giving Greece a significant edge in air superiority. Even more, Greece is negotiating to buy another 6 Rafales in the coming months, expanding its air power further. But here's where it gets really intriguing. Greece has also secured advanced naval vessels, including 3 FDI frigates from France in a deal worth over 3 billion euro. These highly advanced ships are designed to counter Turkey's expanding naval power in contested waters. What's more, Greece is negotiating to acquire an additional FDI frigate and potentially 3 new corvettes, further solidifying its maritime defenses. But that's not all. Greece recently made a significant move by committing to purchase 20 F-35 fighter jets with an option to buy another 20. The first delivery of these game-changing aircraft is scheduled for 2028. The F-35, with its stealth capabilities and advanced sensors, will provide Greece with unmatched aerial superiority. The cost of this acquisition is part of a larger budget overhaul aimed at modernizing the Greek Air Force and ensuring it stays competitive against Turkey's growing capabilities. On top of that, Greece is modernizing its missile systems. upgrading Patriot air defenses and acquiring advanced Spike anti-tank missiles. But here's the fascinating part. Greece is also exploring new anti-drone technology to counter Turkey's growing drone fleet, which has proven effective in several conflicts. Now, here's the crazy part. All of this is happening while Greece faces significant financial constraints. As it turns out, Greece has been funding this buildup through defense cooperation deals, notably with France, and budget reallocations. But as you'll find out later on, their strategy is to leverage contributions from the European Defense Fund and bilateral agreements to minimize the impact on their already stretched budget. So, how is Turkey itself preparing for potential combat? Now, let me make this clear. Turkey's military buildup isn't just about keeping up with Greece. It's about establishing itself as a regional powerhouse. And here's where it gets intriguing. Unlike Greece, Turkey has heavily invested in its indigenous defense industry, which is already reshaping modern warfare. First off, the Bayraktar TB2 drones are a cornerstone of Turkey's military exports. With over 600 produced, way more than earlier estimates. These drones, costing about $1 million each, have revolutionized warfare, proving decisive in conflicts like Syria, Libya, and Nagorno-Karabakh. Their role in Azerbaijan's victory over Armenia cemented Turkey's global reputation in drone warfare, with 25 plus countries buying these game changers. But drones are just the start. Turkey's ambitious stretch to advance missile systems like the SAM cruise missile and the Bora ballistic missile. And here's the jaw dropper. In 2023, Turkey's Typhoon missile hit a range of 560 kilometers, doubling the range of their previous longest range missile. This marks a new chapter in Turkey's missile capabilities. Then there's the Blue Homeland strategy and Turkey's push to dominate the Eastern Mediterranean. The TCG Anadolu, Turkey's largest ship, is just the tip of the iceberg. Turkey's building 24 new naval vessels over the next decade, including I-class frigates, Ada-class corvettes, TF-2000 air defense frigates, OPVs, and Reese-class submarines. The colossal naval program underscores Turkey's ambition to control the region's waters. But it doesn't stop there. Turkey's Altay tank project, despite delays and costs ballooning over $500 million, is back on track thanks to the support from South Korea. And with sanctions straining Western relations, Turkey is pushing harder to ensure these projects don't stall. So, how is Turkey financing all this? Domestic production is key, cutting reliance on imports. Plus, Turkey's defense exports surged to $4 billion in 2022. Helping fund these massive projects. Even U.S. sanctions following Turkey's purchase of the S-400 system haven't slowed them down. Turkey's response? Developing its own next-gen fighter, the TFX, despite delays. In short, Turkey is positioning itself as a military heavyweight, and its indigenous production gives it an edge. But can they keep up the pace? Or will economic pressures force them to pump the brakes? Which begs the question, how are global powers responding to the looming threat of conflict in the Eastern Mediterranean? Now, let me make this clear. The new Greece-Turkey arms race isn't happening in a bubble. The entire world is watching closely, and global reactions could be just as crucial as the conflict itself. NATO is in a tricky spot. Both Greece and Turkey are key members, and any conflict could fracture the alliance. What's worse, Turkey's growing ties with Russia, like their purchase of the S-400 missile system, have already strained NATO relations. In response, the U.S. booted Turkey from the F-35 program, leaving Turkey scrambling to modernize its fleet. Meanwhile, the EU is also trying to balance support. Greece has lobbied hard for EU backing, and the EU has even sanctioned Turkey over its drilling in the Mediterranean. But it's more complicated than you might think, because Turkey is crucial to EU migration deals and regional security. Although the U.S. has traditionally maintained a neutral stance between Greece and Turkey, recent developments suggest a shift in policy. The delays in selling F-16s to Turkey and the strengthening of ties with Greece indicate that Washington is adjusting its strategy. The U.S. appears to be aiming to restrain Turkey's regional ambitions while reinforcing Greece as a dependable ally. Adding to the complexity, strained relations between Turkey and Israel, coupled with Israeli lobbying against Turkish military acquisitions in the U.S., further influence this dynamic. Meanwhile, Russia has become a crucial player in Turkey's defense strategy, complicating Turkey's relationship with the West even further. The S-400 missile system purchased from Russia, along with ongoing projects like nuclear reactors and agreements for lower natural gas prices, has intensified the friction between Turkey and Western allies. Turkey's growing partnership with Russia is expanding Moscow's influence in the Eastern Mediterranean, making the geopolitical landscape increasingly precarious as global powers align themselves in this high-stakes conflict. So, how would a potential conflict between Greece and Turkey reshape the economic landscape of both nations? And what unforeseen consequences might ripple through the global economy? Now, let me make this clear. The economic fallout from a war between Greece and Turkey would be catastrophic for both sides. War isn't just about military losses, it's about financial devastation, societal disruption, and long-term economic decline. The 1974 Cyprus conflict is a clear example. The economic consequences of the combat lingered for years, with both Greece and Turkey suffering not just from the cost of the war, but from lost growth opportunities and instability. But that's not the only concern. A conflict today would disrupt crucial regional trade routes, especially in the Eastern Mediterranean, which is a major energy corridor. Vast amounts of oil and gas pass through these waters, and any disruption could send shockwaves through global energy markets, severely affecting not only Greece and Turkey, but the entire European economy. Both countries rely heavily on these routes for their own energy imports, so any conflict could lead to energy shortages and higher prices domestically. Even worse, both Greece and Turkey's tourism industries would take a massive hit. Greece generates about 20% of its GDP from tourism, while Turkey's tourism sector accounts for around 11% of its economy. Even minor skirmishes or heightened tensions can make tourists weary, leading to massive losses for hotels, restaurants, and local businesses. A full-blown conflict could cripple both countries' tourism industries, causing long-term economic instability. Which leads us to the question, what does the future hold in the relationship between Greece and Turkey? And what ominous projections might emerge from the current tensions? To wrap things up, Greece and Turkey are entrenched in a high-stakes arms race that goes beyond mere military might. The truth is that both nations are grappling with severe economic strains, and the looming costs of conflict are truly astonishing. But the question isn't whether they can afford this arms race, but whether they can avoid it altogether. Perhaps turning to the International Court of Justice could be the game changer both countries desperately need. Here's why. First, it would shift the political burden from national leaders to international law, sparing them from the blame if the court's decision isn't in their favor. Second, it could prevent the devastating consequences of a war that would cripple their economies and endanger countless lives. Third, it provides a way to resolve long-standing issues peacefully, easing tensions within NATO and removing a major geopolitical burden that has persisted for decades. Think about it. A resolution through the International Court of Justice could bring lasting peace, allowing both Greece and Turkey to focus on rebuilding and prospering rather than engaging in a costly arms race. What do you think? Is diplomacy the answer to this high-stakes game? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed watching, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. We've also handpicked some videos we think you'll find incredibly interesting. They're right here on your screen. So be sure to check them out. Thanks for watching.